But, metaphorically speaking, of course, anytime we have warned of an impending eruption on the show as it relates to college football, that eruption has happened. And I am warning you tonight, one is coming in about, 20 days or so. There you go. I put a time frame on it so you don't have to guess when it happens as to whether that was what I was talking about. Late Kick is live. We're jam-packed high atop a sunny South Florida. We're in Fort Lauderdale tonight. We'll be all over the country again this week. I always told you, always warned you, if this company ever looked and said, hey, we're just going to throw a lot of money in a tour, we would literally never live in Nashville again. We're just going to live on the road. And that's what we've been doing with the speaker series. But that's this week. As for tonight, transfer portal's about to light up, guys. It's about to light up. And I'm not talking about some second and third string movement. Sure, that's going to happen. But I'm talking about things well above and beyond just that. There is, speaking of movement, too much of it going on in coaching circles. And I have bitten my tongue for too long, so I'm going to talk about it tonight. You guys claim I never do that, so I'm going to do it tonight. Michigan, got some things to say. Arkansas, got some things to say. The entire ACC, I've got some things to say. And USC, don't think I didn't notice. According to you guys, no one else did. I noticed what you're doing out there. They're watching us in West Palm Beach, Florida, Charleston, West Virginia, Traverse City, Michigan, and Brownsville, Texas. Thank you guys so much. I cannot implore you enough. If you're not already doing it, oh, look at that little pill mic, a little scrunched up. Make sure you're following at Late Kick Josh, because we were in, let's see, last week I went to Miami. That's kind of an off-the-record thing. You're not even supposed to know that. Then I went up to Missouri. Then we went over to Kansas State. Then we went to Iowa State. And the iJosh was there. It was just me and the iJosh most of the time. And I got you a lot of stuff. If you were following on Instagram, you saw it. Otherwise, you're not going to see it because that's sort of off-record, behind-the-scenes sort of things that I only show you there. Anyway, I say all that to say, we're going to 3 more places this week. We will have 3 new head coaches on this show this week that have never been on the show. That's what makes them new. It's not first-year guys. Some of them are veterans. In fact, all 3 of them are. So make sure you're following. And I will give you a heads up towards the end of the show where I'm going Tuesday, because that show's literally going to be live from there 48 hours from now. In the meantime, though, I need to discuss something with you because I don't want you to be taken off guard by this. A lot of your casual friends to the left and right are. I don't want you to be taken off guard by this. The transfer portal is going to go boom big time. I know a lot of you do not look forward to April 15th for financial reasons, but you got a lot of coaches out there who are sweating it and biting their fingernails to the nubs right now because the transfer portal is going to go crazy. So I had someone hit me up and say, hey, with the back and forth transferring we've seen from Caden Proctor, now heading back to Bama, what other craziness should we expect when the portal opens back up in the spring? So the whole Caden Proctor thing, yes, I'm going to talk about it. Actually, I'm going to touch on a little bit more later in the show, but here's basically what's happening. Caden Proctor's the #1 tackle out of the country last recruiting cycle, well, 2 cycles ago, I guess, and he's from Iowa, and he's committed to Iowa. He decommits from Iowa. He signs with Alabama. He starts wall-to-wall as a true freshman, gets a little homesick around Christmas, plays in the national championship semifinal, and then goes to Iowa, hits the portal, goes to Iowa, stays there for about 15 minutes, then decides, I'm going back in the portal, and looks like he's going back to Alabama. And a lot of you have looked and said, that's kind of ridiculous. Well, of course it is. Yes, but I will talk about that a little bit later. But the other day, yours truly made headlines in a roundabout way because I was on the road. And here's what happens when you're on the road, guys. You talk to a whole lot of coaches and you talk to a whole lot of people in recruiting departments. And the Proctor stuff took a lot of you by surprise. The Proctor stuff was not, as I said on Twitter the other day, one of the 3 wildest rumors that I heard last week. Now, that rumor ended up coming to fruition. My point is, you're going to see some things happen this April that probably make you forget about Caden Proctor. Like right now, everyone's looking saying, whoa, can you believe that happened? And I, humbly, am here to tell you, by the time the dust settles at the end of April, you'll say, remember when we thought the Caden Proctor flip back to Alabama was the craziest thing in the portal cycle? Yeah, so the post-spring transfer portal cycle coming up may actually be wilder than the December window, which should never be the case, but apparently I think that's going to be the case this time around. So here's what's happening. There are no rules. They tore down all the speed limit signs, and I think the college football public is still severely underestimating what that actually means. Like, what kind of tangible impact is that going to have? The impact's going to be enormous. I'll tell you more about just how enormous that'll be in a second, but Do you understand now? There were very few limitations on this already, but now there are no limitations. And so you haven't gotten to a cycle yet in the no limitation world. Like you have been used to there being a few limitations, and there were like duct tape and paper clips holding guys in place, but now there are none. And it's only been a few weeks to a couple of months since the NCAA basically got their hands slapped and federal courts and whatnot said, no, you can't do that. There are no restrictions on anything. The first testing ground we're going to have since that happened is the post-spring transfer portal window. And friends, it is going to take you by surprise. It's going to be like jumping into 50-degree water. It's going to make you tense up for a second. A lot of you are nervous. Frankly, you should be nervous because there are no players who are safe right now. And I mean no players who are safe right now. This, I think, is going to be necessary. It's not going to be good because I'm not a believer that this is good for the sport. I know there's a pushback, like I'm solo on the desk right now. Of course, we could bring someone in here who would look me across the table and say, why isn't it good? Why shouldn't players be? Save all that. I know your point. I take your point. Fine. When we're having a discussion for the greater good of college football, you will never convince me that lack of roster continuity, that rosters being totally fluid all the time is good. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not good for the players. It's good for them to have the rights, but it's ultimately not in the best interest of them. It's certainly not in the best interest of schools and programs and whatnot. But anyway, the reason I say it's good that this is going to happen is because you can't change anything about how we got here, like that's in the past. That's the definition of unchangeable. But what we can do is we can have some cattle prod to the neck moments, so to speak, with the sport. And one of the cattle prods to the neck, I think, was seeing Proctor do what he did the other day. And I think another cattle prod to the neck is you're going to have head coaches have no idea who's on their team after spring ball. And in some cases, you're going to get your hearts broken over the coming month or so, and you're going to see that we have no recourse. We're going to get our roster rated after spring. It's going to happen to a larger degree than it's happened the previous cycles, so just get ready for it. And there are going to be some glaring examples of programs and teams that get victimized, and there are going to be some glaring examples of programs that reap the benefits of that victimization. And some of you are going to love it because your team benefits. Most of you are going to hate it because you look at it and say, holistically, this is terrible. This is not what college football should be, but it's necessary. You're right. It shouldn't be that, but it's necessary because whatever has to happen for there to be quick change, it has to be jarring. It can't be the pot of cold water that you toss the frog into and then slowly heat it up because it just slowly boils to death. But you boil the water and toss the frog in, all of a sudden he jumps. He jumps into action. Why? Because he doesn't want to boil to death. And I think similarly, you're about to see an April that goes down in the history books for roster reconstruction and deconstruction, but also probably 4 or 5 years from now, whenever we've gotten ourselves into a more settled calendar, you'll look back and you'll wonder in amazement how anyone slept at night during this period of college football, and you'll also look back and say, I hated this, and that at the time, but who's to say we would have gotten these changes if this, and that didn't happen? Now, I told you I was going to give you an example, and I will anonymously here. So I have done as much due diligence for you on this as I can. I got to keep names out of it. But let me just give you an idea of what's happening out there on the college football streets right now. Everybody behind the scenes knows it's going to get really crazy in April. And so what's happening right now, I kid you not, I had someone walk me through the other day a specific position group at a major university out there. And not only were there kids on that team in that position group that coach knew not going to be on my team after April 20th or 25th, but also this group of coaches knew who they were going to backfill with. And the names that they're going to backfill with are on other rosters currently. That's not an isolated example. Just so happens to be one I'm privy to. It's not an isolated example. That is, I would venture to say, closer to the rule right now than the exception. And it's not that everyone wants to play that game. In fact, we had Kirby Smart on the show a couple of weeks ago. Remember what he said? He said, I could do with everything else if you just tell me who's going to be on my team. If I just knew, starting with spring, this is my roster for this year, I don't even care. I don't like it, but they could transfer as many times as they want to. But can we please just lock something in January or February where we know we're going to go through a full calendar season with guys? Well, the answer is hopefully one day, yes, fingers crossed. But right now, no, you cannot. And they're going to be some big time, not just role players, big time impact players who are about to be on different rosters come fall. Preview magazine culture is going to have a conniption fit, as Meemaw used to say. How are you supposed to print your magazines? Don't let that ink dry. Don't let that ink dry. We move along. Crazy times coming up, kids. Crazy times. I am so happy to have you guys with us. We're all over the country right now. We have not done a show in the same spot twice in it feels like forever, and we won't. We're going to be live Tuesday from somewhere, and we're going to be live Thursday from somewhere. And you know what? We're going to stop Wednesday somewhere as well. So you need to keep an eye on this YouTube channel, Late Kick YouTube channel. Like, for instance, I went to Kansas State the other day. We didn't do a full show from there, but Chris Kleiman sat down with us for about 25 or 30 minutes, and he gave us some really good stuff, and we've never had him on the show before. And we had Matt Campbell on Thursday. We had Eli Drinkwitz on Tuesday, and got 3 more really good ones this week. So keep an eye out. I've got so many different directions to go tonight, so let's just continue to go through it. There are many, many different angles that we're going to take the show tonight. Let's go to George. George is in Baton Rouge. He said, hey, which teams do you think are more likely to win 3 or more games this year than they did last year? Love this kind of question. Nebraska is the first team that came to mind. You've got the Rule year 2 effect, which is basically just he's done much better in year 2 and 3 than year 1 everywhere he's been. And that goes for Temple and that goes for Baylor. And I'm not responsible for what he did in the NFL. So we're just talking college football. They are number 3 in returning production this year. We have very, very much documented on this show how much we love Nebraska's defensive mentality. Their defensive staff is excellent, one of possibly the most underrated defensive staffs in America. They brought in a top 25 class with young guys who will contribute this year. Dylan Raiola, not the least of which, at quarterback. And the win total's at 7.5. So they don't have Penn State on the schedule. They don't have Michigan. They don't have Oregon. They do play Ohio State. They may be favored every game up until that point. So if I'm trying to add 3 more wins onto last year's record, which is 5-7, if I'm looking to get to 8 wins, I think it's there. I also think it could be there for TCU. TCU 2 years ago goes and plays in a national championship game, and you can make fun of what happened to him in that game, but they were there. Rest of y'all weren't, unless you're Georgia. So they go there, then they fall off a cliff seemingly last year, which shouldn't have been very surprising. I know this is going to sound really ridiculous. There wasn't like a huge difference in the previous year's TCU and last year. It's just one-possession games. They won a ton of one-possession games the year before. Last year, they lost 4 one-possession games, 3 of them, I think, by a field goal, right, Jesse? So it's just those games going the other way. Well, what's going to happen this year? They went 5-7 last year. Didn't even make a bowl game. So how do they win 8 games? They're over-under at FanDuel 7.5. How do they win 8 games? Well, they brought in a top 20 transfer class, so that needs to pan out. I trust Sonny Dykes. It's not like the guy forgot how to coach football since he took him to a national championship game. Now, here's the downside. Relatively speaking, they do play 6 of the top 8 odds teams in the Big 12. Now, notice, I say that a lot this time of year. So all we're talking about there is we're taking the FanDuel odds to win the Big 12 in this case. And we're seeing, that's how we're rating a conference before we do our own ratings. And TCU plays 6 of the top 8 teams on the FanDuel odds board. But to get to 8 wins, it's just winning the one-possession games over there. And I think they brought in the transfer class to do that. What about Miami? So Miami went 7-6 last year. They improved. They went 7-6 last year. The question is, could they add 3 wins onto that? I think you may be surprised to know that Miami's over-under win total at FanDuel's 9.5. Like, odds makers have them up there. So to go over, they literally have to add 3 wins onto last year's total. There are so many roster upgrades here. So many. I'm not going to break down position unit by position unit. They bring back both coordinators. That's very valuable. Cam Ward will be very good for them. Just take my word on that. Will be very good for them. Elijah Arroyo is a name that I mentioned a lot last year at tight end, and then he got hurt, so he didn't get to shine. I have all my Elijah Arroyo stock. I didn't sell it. I did not sell it. Still holding on to it. He's still there. I believe Miami could be in the conversation. They open at the Swamp. How pressure-packed is that game? How intense from a national standpoint? Because a lot of you are so sadistic and you want to see that negativity seep in for someone in week 1. Well, it will. Especially if Florida were to lose that game. It will. So there you go. You don't have to wait long. August 31st. I haven't even named our tour for this fall, mainly because I outsourced that to you. And I don't know where we'll be week 1, but I know that game is on the radar, which would mean 2 years in a row we've been to a Florida game in week 1. That's not official. What about Auburn? Auburn? Yeah? What you think? They went 6-7 last year. Could they win 9 games this year? We could have gone A&M in the SEC as well, but we went Auburn. So if the underclassmen deliver, and they will have to, that's part 1 of the formula. Part 2 is the dimensions in this offense weren't there last year. They were not good. And there were, I think, 4 or 5 games where they didn't have a 100-yard passer, which is it's very antithetical to what you would expect from a Hugh Freeze offense. So I don't know how improved they'll be this year. I think they will be improved on that front. They brought in some guys specifically at receiver in this signing class, like Cam Coleman. Cam Coleman may be the best receiver on Auburn's team the day he stepped on campus. So he will be an immediate contributor there. They need a lot of that in that freshman class. We just talked about Miami. It's sort of the theme you saw with Miami last year. They brought in a heralded class. A lot of those guys, the day they stepped on campus, were better in terms of raw talent than the guys in their position room. Maturity, ability to, digest a playbook. Do you blend in socially when you get on a college campus? All that stuff ultimately goes into how much playing time you get. You got to stay healthy as well. So Auburn I'd put on that list. Syracuse I'd put on this list. Kyle McCord going there is a huge deal. People have kind of forgotten that because you're mainly worried about Ohio State because they're the big popular brand name, and they got Will Howard and they're off to the races. Well, Syracuse got a guy who Ryan Day trusted to start for him at quarterback last year. That's a big deal. They're number 10 in returning production. That's a big deal. As soon as Fran Brown took the job there as head coach, they went and got some guys out of the transfer portal. Their recruiting saw an uptick. There is no, follow me here, there is no Clemson or Florida State or SMU or Louisville or North Carolina on the schedule. I can't believe that's accurate. That's insane that can happen in the ACC. They also don't have a Power 4 team in their non-conference schedule. That's why I'm looking at the schedule. There was a pregnant pause there because I'm looking at the schedule. Ohio, Holy Cross is on there. That's good. Home to Rudy for a brief period of time when he got his grades in order. That is an amazing schedule. So, yeah, Syracuse, what were they? They were 6-7 last year. You aren't always what your record says you are in this sport. There is a world where Syracuse ends up being a 9-win team this year. And they don't have classical 9-win characteristics necessarily, but it could be there. All right, let's move on. We have to talk about something very, very serious that is, not plaguing college football, but it's not good. I would go so far as to say it's bad. You know what? I'll just say it. It's bad. Okay, so let's set the scene here. There is way too much coaching churn in college football. Way too much. Haven't really talked about this a lot on the show, but there is an absurd amount of movement in the coaching industry. And I'm not talking about guys who get fired, and I'm not talking about guys who take massive leaps promotionally. That's understandable. No one's mad at that. I'm not even suggesting a rule change in the world of college football coaching movement. I'm more suggesting an attitude change. In a perfect world, you don't have to tell guys, hey, don't be preaching loyalty and accountability and brotherhood only to make a lateral move 2 weeks after you said it. You shouldn't have to be telling folks that. In a perfect world, they just get it because they're practicing what they're preaching. Some guys in this industry do. Many of them do. Some of them don't. So we went up to Iowa State Thursday. We had a live show from Ames, and they welcomed us in. But earlier in the day, I sat down with Matt Campbell. And there was a clip from the interview I had with Matt Campbell that I cannot recommend to you enough. I put it out on the social channels and it went crazy and had a lot of you coaches reach out behind the scenes and say, thank you for that. Like, we wish that message was out there more. Because see, in the coaching community, a lot of guys look at other guys hopping all around. They don't like it because they know it reflects poorly on the industry as a whole, not just those specific coaches. So, then all coaches get a bad rap for it. And it's not totally unearned. So I'm going to play a piece of sound for you. And I want you to think, as you listen to this, what is your perfect world? Because a lot of people have complained about the player movement and players going all over the place. And then other people have yelled back, well, coaches do it all the time. And that's this ongoing debate in college football. Well, stop for a second and then ask, in a perfect world, what does coaching movement look like? And as you're picturing that, tell me if it doesn't sound a whole heck of a lot like the world Matt Campbell explains himself living in. Short of like internet rumors, there's never been really serious traction to you not being here. So could you walk people through as much as you can the thought process you have when you have opportunity?
I've been that guy where it's like, geez, should I be climbing this ladder of job to job at a really young age to, when we got to Iowa State and have been able to build something different. And I know, for me, leaving the University of Toledo was really hard, to be quite honest. From Ohio, my wife and I had never left Ohio at that time, 3 kids with a 4th on the way. We had grandparents and family that were, anchors to us, and it was really hard to leave. And, that was the first time I said, geez, I don't know if this is what I want to do. I want to be able to lay roots and build something different and something that's really special that can stand for something. And, I think that's the one gratitude that I have for being the head coach. I walk in here every day and I'm just beyond grateful to be the head football coach at Iowa State. And, we've been able to build a program that I really believe stands for something. And on top of that, as we've had our successes and some of that outside noise has come in, even personally for me, I've always gone back to the checklist of number one, I wanted to be a great father. I want to be a great husband. I never wanted to, let the profession ruin what's most important to me, and that's my family. And number two, you want to work for great people and with great people. And, I think I'm really fortunate that, we've got great trust within our athletic department here, within our administration here, within our coaching staff here. That's been really important, and it's a joy to come in every day and work with people that are aligned to the same vision. And then I think the third part of it, which is probably the most important part, is what do you stand for in this profession? I think for me, it's been, I wanted to build something that allows young people to feel confident and to feel trusted when they come into our football program, that they can go through this profound transition that they're going through in life. 18 years old, leaving home for the first time, getting into this uber competitive environment. And all of a sudden, you want that support, you want that trust that your coach is going to be there, that these people are going to be there, and they're building something that's going to support this journey that should change your life forever if it's done correctly. And, I think that's something that we've been really proud of, because we've been able to build that kind of football program here. So really, as my own journeys happen, I think defining who are you, what do you want to stand for, and what are the type of people that you want to surround yourself with, and we've been really fortunate to be able to do that here.
So I want you to ask yourself, does that sound like how you wish more coaches thought? And if the answer is yes, which I think it is for most of you, ask yourself this. What are the most recent comments you've made about Matt Campbell? Because I'm looking at the live chat here, and it's pretty similar to what I would normally hear out there. You'd probably be painfully misguided on what history is at Iowa State. A 7 or 8 win season at Iowa State's a really big deal. I don't know if you guys understand that. And he does that, and probably will be in that range again this year. So are you crediting guys like that? Are you praising guys like that? Or are you claiming you want something, but then when someone exhibits what you claim you want, are you trying to dunk on them to get 37 retweets? That's the first thing I'd ask. The second thing I'd ask is, that's great just in isolation. But you know what the bigger picture here is, right? I think most of you do, because most of you are participating in this right now. I am too. Most of us are participating in this conversation, and the conversation sounds a little something like this. Don't you be complaining about these players moving around if you're going to move around as well. And we've long since addressed the differences in coaches and players on this show. Coaches are not players. Coaches have contracts, and when you violate the terms in that contract, there's a buyout to be paid, so it's not penalty-free. No one's suggesting it is. But for broad strokes purposes, you know as well as I do, those coaches are in those locker rooms, those coaches are in those position rooms, and they're preaching one thing and practicing another far too often. And so that's a valid argument. I have spoken about this several times just this month alone, of the fact that even though I readily admit there is a difference in coaches and players, and I readily admit it's not the exact same thing when an offensive lineman goes from Alabama to Iowa and then Iowa back to Alabama as a coach moving, it is pretty ridiculous and does make the argument pretty moot when you do have everywhere from coaches to athletic directors out there taking a job and then being gone weeks to a few months after they sign on the dotted line. How are you about to preach accountability or loyalty or consistency to a group of 18 to 22-year-olds when a group of 40 to 60-year-olds can't practice the same characteristics and things? So I get it. I get it, and I have a hard time pushing back on that. There is a realm of movement that everyone understands. Okay, in other words, if I'm the defensive coordinator at Middle Tennessee State and the University of Tennessee offers me the defensive coordinator position, it is understandable that I would make that leap. If I'm the head coach at Middle Tennessee State and the University of Tennessee offers me their head coaching position, it's understandable I would make that leap. But some of these dudes' Wikipedia pages roll out like a scroll. And it's just this lateral movement. It's movement for the sake of movement. Now, as negative as that sounds, I do want to say this. There are a lot of guys, there are a lot of coaches out there who turn down offers every cycle. And most of the legitimate offers that are there, most of the legitimate opportunities to take that guys decline, you never hear about. A lot of times when you hear about it, it's posturing from an agent, and we all get how that game's played. So I do hat tip, I salute everyone who does that. I had a head coach recently who I know had offers on the table that every one of us would have looked at and said, that job is better than the one you have. Not light years better, but this job and this job, they're better than the ones you have. And I had that coach look at me and say, that's the thing. They're marginally better. Is that really what I want to be? Is that what I want to do? Do I want to just climb rungs on the ladder for the sake of climbing? Do I want to be seen as a mercenary? Do I want to take my kids out of a school? Most importantly, he said, I've been preaching one thing to this locker room since I've been here. Do I want to practice the other thing? Really, it's as simple as that. I think at the end of the day, that's all a lot of people are asking. Just if you espouse these values and beliefs, just practice them. I appreciated Matt Campbell saying that because he didn't even know we were going there. In fact, I have no notes in these interviews because I want it to be that way. And that was a really good conversation we had with him. That entire conversation is on the YouTube channel if you want to see it. They're watching us in Harrisburg, PA, Lincoln, Nebraska, Rome, Georgia, Spokane, Washington. Thank you guys so much. I saw like the entire state of Alabama is playing basketball in Spokane this week. Fascinating. Let's stay on the West Coast for a second. Is it happening at USC? People are talking, so I need to ask, is it happening? And by it, I mean, is USC about to take the leap up to elite status in recruiting? Are they about to recruit the South? Are they about to stack up on the lines of scrimmage? Well, the answer is a big fat remains to be seen, but there have been some positive drum beats in the past day or so. This entire show is basically formatted based on who's been talking the most trash about us. It's unprofessional, but that's the way we do it. So I'm over on the Peristyle earlier. That is the message board on the USC 24/7 site. And I see that they're calling for me. I got a notification they were calling for me over there. And I went over there and they were saying, hey, you're going to talk about USC recruiting now? What now? What now? Very, very standoffish. Not all of them, just some of them. And so I went and I said, yeah, we got a show tonight. I'll talk about it. Now, why would they be making that noise? Well, they're making that noise because Justice Terry, 2 U's in Justice, Justice Terry, 5-star defensive lineman, out of Manchester, Georgia, people, my backyard, Manchester, Georgia, decommitted from Georgia and committed to USC earlier today. And that is right in line with Isaiah Gibson, a 4-star edge player from Warner Robins, committing to USC. There might as well be legal language on the bottom of the screen right now. I'm going to save all of you time. Still comment because it helps us from an SEO perspective, but I'm going to save you time. Everybody knows that this isn't official until they sign on the dotted line. Everybody gets it. Nobody's suggesting these recruitments are over. Georgia, for all I know, could come in and flip both of them, or Bama, or Florida State, or whomstever. This is an in-the-moment thing, okay? And it's symbolic, just like Undertaker versus Boss Man at WrestleMania 15 at the end. A lot of this is symbolic. Symbolically, it signifies not only did Lincoln Riley overhaul his defensive staff, and not only have they talked out there a great deal about this, well, they're going to overhaul everything, but in terms of philosophy, we're overhauling this and that, and well, you got to have the players to do that, okay? So symbolically, this is a really good look. It makes me feel good about the direction of USC on the line of scrimmage and on the defensive side of the ball, and I haven't said that a whole lot since Lincoln Riley's been there. So what do I have to say now? The USC folks asked. Good job. That's what I have to say now. Hold on and press on are the other things that I would say. Hold on, because everyone knows that the recruitments of these guys in a way are just getting started. Don't ever feel safe about anyone. I have no knowledge of whether both of them are solid or not. Like, I have no knowledge of that. I let Wiltfong dive into the weeds on that for me, and I just ask that we get a courtesy text before this stuff's about to go down. But in a broader sense, they know this. I'm just saying, in a broader sense, don't rest on this. In fact, this ought to just be like drinking some pre-workout. Now you're even more fired up. And oh, what a beautiful sunset there. Look at Lincoln Riley's sunset in the background. Whew, it's pretty out there. But you got to have really, really ugly guys to win at the highest levels. They don't have an option on recruiting at the line of scrimmage. Oregon doesn't either. Washington doesn't. UCLA doesn't. None of these West Coast teams have an option. They don't have enough difference makers on the O-line and defensive line on the West Coast. You have to recruit those positions nationally if you're going to win at the highest level. If Oregon or USC are going to win the Big Ten, they have to have defensive and offensive linemen from Louisiana and Georgia and Texas and Ohio. Got to do it. It's a non-negotiable. You got to know what it looks like east of the Mississippi River if you want to find out knowing what it looks like come playoff time. You know, what does it feel like to have confetti raining down on you? Well, to find out, you're going to have an O-line and D-line compromised or whatever, of guys from all over the place. That's exciting. I'm not saying it's not. I am also saying it's March, so let's pace ourselves, and it's for our own good. I am now speaking as a member of the peristyle over there. It's for our own good. We have to be cautiously optimistic on this, but we have to look over each shoulder each and every day. Because here's what you're going to notice. As you guys knew once upon a time, when you have 4- and 5-star line of scrimmage talent committed, there aren't a lot of them. And conversely, there are tons of programs in need. And in the era of no rules, no limits, anything goes, when desperation sets in, you never know what those guys are going to have put on their plate. That's why I do not care how firm the language is and the communication is today between any kid and a coaching staff. People aren't desperate enough yet. It's like we're in an election season. And since I will never turn the show into a political show, this is as close as I get. I don't really ever pay attention to what's happening in January and February because people aren't desperate enough. When the desperation sets in July, August, September, then you start seeing the haymakers. Gloves come off, risk reward doesn't matter anymore. Well, it's the same way with a collective. It's the same way with a booster. It's the same way with a position coach that knows jobs on the line. It's the same way with a head coach that knows his job's on the line. What are you ready to sign off on that you probably aren't quite ready to do yet? So anyway, good for Lincoln Riley. And both of those guys came from the state of Georgia. Wilfong's got a piece on 24/7 Sports right now about how much noise, how much waves they're making, USC, in the South, just recruiting the South. You've got to do it. You have got to do it. They may have all the quarterbacks and wide receivers in the world you need out in California. They don't have the linemen you need out there. You can have 1,000,001 theories as to why that is. They don't have them out there. You know where they have them? Mississippi. You know where they have them? Georgia, Louisiana. They got them there. They've got them there. Let's ask some questions. We've been going around the country because it is, after all, spring. And I have it on good authority. Hold on, let me pull up my notes to make sure it's right. So, Jesse, summer comes after spring and then it's fall, right? Yes. Okay, so the season will get here. We have 22 Saturdays between us and college football season. But in the meantime, Big questions in the ACC right now, and some of them may be on your radar and some of them may not be. Is Clemson's offense going to be better this year? How much better? How much better? If you say yes, how much better will it be? Because Garrett Riley, when he got hired as the OC there last year, I celebrated it. I still think it's worth celebrating, but they were 98th in yards per play last year. Now, I think a lot of people who watched Clemson would attribute that to the fact that they didn't have good enough football players to be, well, let me scratch that, because they should have been better than that with their roster. They didn't have the football players on that side of the ball to be at the elite level. And I'm specifically talking about wide receiver. Now, I've been on this Clemson wide receiver kick for a few years, with good reason. But Tyler Brown is a name that excites me there. Antonio Williams, couple of freshmen they got in there, they may be overhauling the type of personnel that they have in that wide receiver room. Now, I'm not saying they're going back to vintage mid to late 20-teens Clemson quite yet, but I think that room will be noticeably better than it has been over the past couple of years. Cade Klubnik, just limit the turnovers. Offensively, just limit the turnovers. I think they'll be better this year. How much better, I guess is my question. What about Florida State? Florida State, couple of things here. So they've got a new look defense, and they're losing some wide receiver talent to the draft. Now, on the defensive side, this is wild now. Florida State, you go all three levels of the defense. They're losing 135 starts on the D-line, 93 starts at linebacker, 101 starts at DB. I kind of still like what they have at DB. I have a lot of questions about what they are up front. So that's number one. Number two is, I mean, what am I going to get out of that wide receiver room? It's a big-time talent heading out. Hakeem Williams is down there, and he committed. Didn't even have to transfer him in. But, you know, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, it's very, very tough to just replace the numbers that are walking out the door. But in the aggregate, you can do it. You know, it's a complementary sport, and I implicitly trust Mike Norvell. I think that became very apparent last year. What about Miami? What about the DB position at Miami? It's one of the deepest rosters actually in the ACC, believe it or not. They've recruited well, they've portaled well, but the DB position, they lost Cam Kitchens and James Williams, safety combo there, and they lost a couple of corners as well. Now, obviously, they have, like I said, recruited well. They will replenish through the portal. It's also a program that I think is going to be a very hot commodity after the spring, that post-spring portal window. So I'm looking at Miami in the defensive backfield. I'm going to Chapel Hill for a second. I'm looking at North Carolina. Drake May's not there anymore. So it's been a weird thing here. I don't know. You North Carolina fans can decide how you feel about this. Anytime you have a high-level, like NFL-type quarterback prospect for several years, and you don't win anything highly noteworthy, do you feel like it was a wasted era? That's an open-ended question. Like, I feel that way about Caleb Williams at USC. I don't know if you guys do or don't feel the same way at North Carolina. But Drake May's gone. So the O-line QB combination is my question here. The recruiting and portaling has not necessarily been at a level that would indicate to me, oh, they'll be okay, they'll be fine. I don't feel that way necessarily about North Carolina. They're 127th in returning production. And basically what you have this year, you know who the quarterback is at North Carolina, by the way? Anyone remember Max Johnson, the former lefty from Texas A&M? He's at North Carolina now. You got him, and you got an offensive line that's having to replace 168 combined starts, career starts. Will they do it? Time will tell. I also need to remind you, speaking of transfer quarterbacks, Tyler Shuck, most recently seen at Louisville. Yes, Tyler Shuck has not played more than 7 games since 2020. But if he can, we all remember that stat that was floating around last year. What was it, Jesse? They were, I should not have even started to say this because I can't remember most of the stat. Anyway, the spirit of it was, you know, when Tyler Shuck plays an entire year, his team can be pretty good. Will he be able to play an entire year this year? And also, I know you think offense when you think Louisville. They don't have a bad defense. They're top 10 in returning defensive production. So maybe as they ease him into it, maybe defense can carry the water a little bit for him. They had to really work. They had like a Syracuse schedule last year. Syracuse has got the Louisville schedule this year is the different way to say that. So there's some ACC questions. I always ask a lot of questions in the spring, but how often do we come back and give answers to these questions in December? And this is just essentially me verbalizing my own show notes right now. Something I should wait to do until afterwards. Colin, do we have that question about Arkansas? I noticed back in the day, we were accused of being an Arkansas show masquerading as a national college football show, as one former viewer put it. I don't think it was quite that bad, guys, but we have not talked Arkansas in quite a while on the show. So much so that it has raised some question. Question from Fayetteville here. It seems like you've been avoiding talking about Arkansas so far this year. Could you be sleeping on us this year, my boy? Maybe. Or maybe I've just been asleep. So there are a ton of what ifs here. There are just a ton of ifs, actually. Now, you know they brought Bobby Petrino back in. Do you know that? Do you know that? It seems to me like with so many different things happening around the sport, sometimes you don't just have the ability to draw in the back of your mind every headline. So some of you may have forgotten, and if you have, or even better, if you just chose to take a little mental break from college football for the last few months, and if you're an Arkansas fan, it would be understandable. After all, this is a baseball school. If you're just now checking back in, it is my privilege, nay, it is my duty and my honor to announce to you that Bobby Petrino is the offensive coordinator at the University of Arkansas. Welcome back, Robert. Okay, allegedly something happened in the past there. I don't know. Look, I mean, who can really trust the internet? And so we don't need to go back down those roads. He specifically doesn't need to go back down those roads. And so the moral of the story is there's a lot of what if tied to Arkansas. And you're asking me if I'm sleeping on them. Well, here's what I've learned. What I've learned is do not get overly optimistic by relying on yeses to all the what ifs. Like, for instance, offensive line was a weakness of this team last year, which is inexcusable if you consider what Sam Pittman's identity should be. If his program's anything, it should be really tough along the line of scrimmage. Well, they weren't last year. Now, the feel around the program, the feel around the fan base could be a lot better. What if they're a lot better? What if number one? What if number two? They went to Boise. They got a transfer quarterback, Taylon Green. What if he just blends seamlessly? It's a perfect match. His skill set, Bobby Petrino's offense. That's something I could see. Wide receiver group shouldn't be terrible this year either. Tight end group's one of the best in the conference. So you got weaponry around you. Running back's not bad either. What if we get Dan Enos out of there, and even though KJ Jefferson was an institution around Fayetteville, what if secretly we kind of upgraded when we combined this guy with the new guy calling the shots offensively? Hey, I'm willing to entertain that. What if, and you notice it just keeps on going, what if turnover luck goes our way this year? What if injury luck goes our way this year? Well, if all of that pans out, you could be like an 8 or 9 win team. Do we count on all that panning out is my question. Because you see, the exercise that's sometimes fruitless that fan bases like to participate in, and I do too, is you start asking these questions in a vacuum about one team. You never ask them about other teams. You see, everybody on your schedule has this list of what ifs in their head as well. And some of them are going to get answers in the affirmative. So some of those teams on your schedule are going to end up on the plus side, more so than the minus side of the what if game. And so you're counting on some of those as W's right now, is my point. And they may not be. And conversely, you may not meet all your what if benchmarks. And this is speaking generically because this applies to every team, not just Arkansas. It sounds to me from talking to the fan base, which boy I did over at Hog Sports. In fact, let me just make sure. Arkansas. Yeah, so this thread is 5 pages deep now over on the Arkansas message board. And I don't even know if Trey Biddy's chimed in yet. So imagine, you can't start a fire without a spark. And the spark on that board is Trey Biddy weighing in. I mean, that's like hidden lyrics in the Springsteen song. So it sounds to me, if I'm interpreting the spirit of this thread over here on the board right, it sounds like Arkansas fans want a definitive outcome this year. They want a definitive outcome in a sense that they overachieve. But it seems to me like a lot of you are saying if we don't get like 8 or 9 wins, we'd rather just bite the bullet and have another bad year because that doesn't leave anything in doubt as to what should happen. Now, we see this a lot. We see this, we saw it with Brian Harsin in his last year at Auburn. This is actually a tale as old as college football's time. Fan bases getting to the point where they're tired of buying in, and then their buy-in doesn't get rewarded, and they don't want to get hurt again. And so if you're not going to take us well above and beyond 5.5 wins, which, by the way, is the over-under at FanDuel right now for Arkansas. If we're not going well above and beyond that, then let's just hit the under. Let's suck it up. Whatever it takes to make it crystal clear that a move has to be made. I don't like talking like that ever, but I specifically don't like talking about it in March. But that's where we are right now. So no, I'm not sleeping on Arkansas. I just don't feel like I have a very good grasp on where the team is right now. How do you really, when you have a new transfer quarterback and a new coordinator, like when you have so much new, who knows what you're going to be? How does Sam Pittman know what they'd be right now? I don't know. But I was mentioning Arkansas over-under at 5.5. So if you are someone who does know, go to FanDuel. Because FanDuel's sitting there right now, and they are saying, oh, you think you know Arkansas better than us, huh? You think they're going to win 7 this year? Well, tell you what, they don't even have to win that many. They can win 6. You take over 5.5 here, and you cover Christmas. Not just for your kids, for your little feral cousins who run around the house December 25th. You can take care of their presents as well with one over bet on Arkansas. Now, are you ready to roll those dice? That's like a rhetorical question for me. FanDuel would never talk to you like that. They respect and appreciate you as a customer. But Pate State does not have a sports book yet. So I can have the grin on my face when I talk about this stuff. They, being FanDuel, are the exclusive odds provider of our show. We thank them so much, and we will continue to have a strong and fruitful relationship, which, as I have said every show for 2 months now, will have a lot more bells and whistles on it come the summer and then fall. Thank you to FanDuel. A lot of good odd stuff over there for the futures market in college football. It's March Madness. If you wanted to get down some money on halftime at Utah State today, I don't know why you would, but if you did want to, that would have been the place to go. You know what we haven't done in a while around here? We haven't done a mood tracker in a while. And we're famous for the mood tracker, if we're famous for anything. We're famous for the mood tracker. Like Meemaw was famous for her biscuits and witty sayings. We are famous for the mood tracker around here. Colin, here's a better endpoint for you. What is the mood around Michigan right now? The fan base. If we take the thermometer and we measure the mood of the fan base, what are people thinking? What are you saying? Well, I'm going to say house money mentality is pretty much the mentality of every Michigan fan. Now, this is B-roll from the national championship game if you're watching on YouTube, and that's maize and blue confetti raining down. Consider the storybook aspect last year. It's a bunch of guys who have been around for a long time. They stuck together. A lot of them had offers to get in the portal. They did not take them. And so, a lot of what you want to believe is Michigan, if you're a Michigan fan, was validated in winning that championship. Winning the title's one thing. The reason they have house money mentality there is you did it with your guy. You did it with a Michigan man and Jim Harbaugh, and everybody outside Ann Arbor detests that phrase. That's why it feels so good, because you don't really care what they think. Nor should you. Number 2, you did it under immense public pressure and spotlight because of the Connor Stallion stuff, because of the allegations of cheating. There is still an NCAA investigation ongoing that's due to wrap sometime by the year 2030. And so as everyone turned up the spotlight on the program, it only made Michigan play better. And that, again, validates everything you believed was the Michigan football program and a senior veteran-laden team. Number 3 is just what I said. This is the reason it's house money. They're not taking that stuff from you. Like, if anyone out there is waiting for the NCAA to drop the bomb on Michigan, it doesn't matter if they do, and they probably won't, but it doesn't matter if they do. No, I think we very much live in a more enlightened world as it relates to the NCAA. Never again will these people come along and take a banner down from your rafters or take a page out of your record book and have anyone take it seriously. No one cares about vacated wins. No one cares about you deeming a championship illegitimate. We saw it. I stood on the field in Houston and watched it. You guys paid more money than you could afford to go see it in person. We all saw it. And it was done in storybook fashion, like the arc includes everything that you would ever want to make that a movie. So whatever happens this year, they've got last year. Up here, they've got it in their memory. The NCAA can't vacate memories, although it wouldn't shock me if they tried to. They can't vacate memories. So you've got total house money mentality this year. You know that even if you go 6-6, just pop in the replay. Just go to YouTube and type in Michigan-Washington replay. You can get the condensed version. You can watch the full game version. You got 15 alternate angles you can watch. It's there. It's never going away. And so when you have that in your back pocket, take it from other fan bases that have won one before. It is what it is. It is what it is. This week will be what it will be. So here's what's happening this week. I know, Janita, we don't have a drum roll sound effect. If you want to bang on the table really loudly in there, that would be a good substitute. I am wearing a white t-shirt tonight because Janita requested it. We're down in Fort Lauderdale. Janita lives in the studio, actually. She lives in Fort Lauderdale. And so she said, why the black shirt? Like, who do you think you are? Looked me in the eye and said that last week. That's how I remember it. And so I had to go to Nashville to get the white t-shirt, so it's back. But anyway, we're going back on the road again this week. The Pate State Speaker Series last week went to 3 stops. This week we'll make 3 more stops. We'll have live shows on Tuesday and Thursday from different campi, plural of campus. And we're going to continue doing this for several weeks. But you know where we're going to be Tuesday night? We will be at the University of South Carolina Tuesday night. Shane Beamer will be on the show one-on-one, and we will get over there. I get to see the cockaboose, which is a real thing. It's not just an excuse to say cockaboose on the show. Contrary to popular belief, there is a little train outside of Williams-Brice Stadium. It is called the cockaboose. It's amazing. If I had my way, we'd just do the show from the cockaboose, but I don't think from a technical perspective we can pull it off. Also, it's private property. That's one of like 5 reasons they gave me. But nevertheless, we will be live from Columbia, South Carolina Tuesday night, and I'll have more announcements to come as the week goes on. Make sure you do me one favor. Subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel. Those are 2 different things. So subscribe to both of them. They cost the following: free and free, but it helps us a lot. Social channels are going to be lit up this week. At Late Kick Josh, make sure you're following. That's all I got. I have got to get out of here and fly to Atlanta tonight for a little private speaking engagement tomorrow. Thank you guys so much. Take care. Have a great start to your week, and God bless.